Alright, gonna play some Final Fantasy VI. Gotta play Final Fantasy VI. Gotta play Final Fantasy VI. Ah, stuff tastes like monkey spit. Right, I know what you're thinking, and I do have to apologize for the lack of Game.Hack content for the last week, because two very important things have happened to me in recent days. One, I have a new job. This entails working a lot of hours, which means I have very little free time to work on Game.Hack. Two, I have received a copy of Plants vs. Zombies, which has ensured that any little bit of free time that I did have after I'm off the clock has rapidly gone down the tubes. For the sake of clarity, let me elaborate on the typical day in the life of Zero. It goes something like this. Get up, take a shower, go to work for 12 freaking hours. Come home, play Harvest Moon Tower Defense Edition and kill zombies for the remaining half hour I can remain awake, crash and fall asleep, get up in the morning, do it all again. This doesn't bode very well for a game as lengthy as this week's topic, which is Final Fantasy VI. Now, there are three versions of Final Fantasy VI that we need to be concerned with in increasing order. First, there's a remake version for the Game Boy Advance. Second, there's another remake version for the PlayStation. But third, and finally, if you're a collector, if you're lucky enough to have your original copy, or if you're just made of money and you're an asshole like me, there is the original Super Nintendo version of Final Fantasy III, otherwise known in the rest of the world as Final Fantasy VI. As a matter of fact, let's explain that a little bit. We do, begrudgingly, for some of us anyway, live in the United States of America. This means a few things. One, all the hot Japanese chicks don't live here. Two, we're allowed to own and drive cars larger than shoeboxes. And three, 75% of the great games in the world are released on the other side of the planet. This was exactly the case with half of the classic Final Fantasy series. Final Fantasy I, as it was released in Japan, was also released in America. Fine. Final Fantasies II and III, however, were not. The next Final Fantasy we saw in the States was actually Final Fantasy IV, but because Squaresoft dropped the ball on this side of the Pacific, it was called Final Fantasy II. Likewise, Final Fantasy V was skipped, and we wound up with a version of FF6 that instead was called Final Fantasy III here. Now, Final Fantasy VI is obviously a great game, but it's also a really long game, and you have to do a lot of level grinding if you want to get ahead. But if you're somebody like me, who all of a sudden has an actual life outside of video games, there's a little trick you can use to get ahead level-wise without having to spend 9/10 of your life playing the stupid game. Here's how. I'm going to assume for the sake of brevity that we're all familiar with this part after you meet up with the returners, where you have to take Bannon and ride the stupid raft to get to Narshe. Before you do this, take some time to do a little bit of preparation, because we can exploit this river thing to gain some free levels over time. Before you jump on the raft, go into your menu and do some configuration. First, set your cursor type to memory, so that every time you enter a battle menu, your cursor will be at the same place where you left it for each character. You also want to make sure your battle speed is set to the fastest. This isn't really critically important, but it'll make things happen faster and you'll be able to gain more levels per hour, which is nice. Your party is predetermined. You're going to have Terra, Edgar, Sabin, and Bannon, and there's nothing you can do about it. But this is okay. Hop on the raft, and just continue as normal until you get to the first save point. While we're doing this, though, we want to set up our battle commands accordingly. First, tell Sabin and Terra just to fight. Have Bannon use his health move to heal everybody every turn, and use auto crossbow with Edgar. This should automatically deal with any enemies and keep all your people healed so you won't die. When you get to the first branch in the river, just take the default option and go straight. Eventually, you'll reach the first save point in the river. You can save here if you want, but it's really not necessary if you save back in the returner hideout. Before you hop back on the raft, you should make sure everybody's all healed up, you've got all your commands set, and you're ready to go. Because this is where we're going to exploit the game. Shortly after leaving the first save point, you're presented with this choice. Hey, which way? You can go up or you can go left. And the default choice is up. Now, the default choice of up is wrong. If you take it through some freak of Asherian physics or some kind of quirk in the laws of thermodynamics, the river actually goes around in a loop and the water flows downhill forever. So your guys will circle around indefinitely as long as you keep choosing up, and will automatically encounter enemies as they go. Because your battle commands are set up properly, all you really need to do to fight is keep tapping A. So in order to pull this off, you're going to need something like turbo controller. And you're going to need something to hold the button on your turbo controller down. I'm going to use this rubber band and to space it out this €5 coin that I got from somewhere. It's as easy as this. Now that we're all set up, you can just put the controller down and go play Plants vs. Zombies for a couple of hours. Tara, Sabin, and Edgar will kill all the enemies, and Bannon will keep all your people topped up on health. Now here is a glitch of interest. You'll notice that these squid enemies will use a technique called ink that will inflict your guys with darkness. They have little sunglasses here. In the US release of Final Fantasy VI, the darkness status effect is bugged. You want to know what it does? Absolutely nothing. So you don't need to worry about curing your guys with darkness because it doesn't affect them at all. By the time you're done with this, all your people will have cool sunglasses. Whatever. Once this is all set up, you'll just keep going around and around and around in circles, killing enemies automatically without any user intervention required whatsoever, and the longer you leave the game, the more experience you'll gain, the more levels you'll increase, and the easier time you'll have playing the entire rest of the game. Now, you'll only truly level up 3 characters that you'll get to keep: Tara, Edgar, and Sabin. But this isn't quite as much of a handicap as it seems. You'll have one of these 3 people with you pretty much entirely throughout the game, and you'll find that when you're walking around with highly leveled characters, other characters that you pick up later in the game will match themselves to your leading character's level when you meet them. Alright, I'm standing here at the second save point in the Leet River. I've left the game running for about 4.5 hours while I killed some zombies, and you'll notice that all my people are about level 34. The longer you leave the game, the more levels you'll gain, but there's a point of diminishing returns because you gain the same amount of XP for every battle, give or take, and every level you gain, it takes an exponentially greater amount of XP to reach the same level. So for all you math gurus in the audience, if you leave the game running overnight for 12 hours, you'll come back to people at about level 50, 60. If you leave it running for a couple of days, you can get up to the 80s or 90s, but it takes a really, really long time to get your people to level 99. Hey, you want to see something funny? Ultros? One-hit KO. Death. While we're on the topic of one-hit KOs, everybody and their dog knows about the Vanish Doom glitch, right? Right? Well, I'm going to show you anyway. Check this out. We should all be fairly well versed in the effects of the Vanish spell, right? You cast it on one of your guys and it makes him invisible, and then all physical attacks miss him. As a trade-off for this, anybody who's got the invisible status becomes really susceptible to magic. The Vanish spell, though, can also be used on the enemy. Some enemies are immune, but a lot of enemies aren't because it's considered a beneficial status ailment, if that makes any sense. Any enemy that has Vanish cast on it becomes susceptible to a whole host of status effects that they'd otherwise be immune to. Things like bosses and tough enemies are immune to being turned to stone, being killed with doom, all kinds of stuff like that. But if you vanish them first, they become vulnerable to all of these things, and you can use it to one-hit KO a lot of tough bosses. All you really need is at least one character who knows how to vanish, and at least one character who knows how to cast Doom. You can use any other instant death spell like Break or even X Zone for a lot of enemies, but Doom is the cheapest and usually the easiest. Plus it makes that really cool Grim Reaper noise. So first, just cast Vanish on a boss. I'm going to use this red dragon that you encounter in the magic tower just for the heck of it, because it's a really tough battle and you can only use magic when you're in the magic tower, so we may as well one-hit KO this thing with a magical combo. You can tell if Vanish worked on an enemy because, well, it turns him invisible. Once you turn the enemy invisible, just cast Doom on him and, well, Doom. Believe it or not, there are yet more important bugs that we need to cover about FF6. Unfortunately, because we're out of time, that's going to have to wait. And also because of this. I'm still wearing my work clothes. I actually went into work at 11 o'clock this morning, and this is no exaggeration. It's actually 12:44 the following morning right now. So if you'll excuse me, I'm going to sign off of here, and we're going to have to postpone everything else about FF6 for a follow-up video. So keep your eyes peeled for that. For now, I'm going to go fall down.